Okay, I will call the October 26, 2021 regular meeting of the Mill Creek City Council to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I can't remember who I called on last, so I'll call again on Councilmember Morgan. Is his mic on?
We can't hear. I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
Do we have audio in the room?
No, we can't hear. Can you hold on one second? Let me check with Joe.
Maybe.
Oh, now I can hear you.
No.
Yeah, you guys were cutting in and out. Thank you.
Okay, did the pledge get performed?
It
Was
did.
it recorded?
Yes,
We
Okay.
didn't hear
It
the
was me.
sound though.
we can do it again and give someone a mic.
Oh, so
Adam, can you say something in your mic to see if we can hear you?
Sure.
Yeah,
Is it
we-
working? It's
Yeah,
fine.
let's
Okay.
try it one more time. Let's do the pledge. of
Mayor
All right.
Pro Tem, can you bring the
When we
wireless
stand up, we're
microphone?
not speaking into the mics.
yeah,
What do you-
so.
What do you need me to do?
We need
The
somebody.
wireless microphone, if you can just bring it as we say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'll leave my mic on. Just check. All right, take two.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, got it on the second take. Thank you. Naomi, roll call, please.
Yes. Mayor Holtzclaw,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Vanel,
Here,
Councilmember Bond,
Here,
Councilmember Cavallari, Councilmember Steckler,
here,
Councilmember Briles,
here.
Councilmember Morgan.
Here.
Councilmember Cavallari is dealing with family matters on the East Coast and is unable to attend tonight. Can we have a motion to excuse, please?
Councilmember Cavallari.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Before we get to audience communication, I'm participating remotely tonight because we've had an outbreak of COVID at my office. I have tested negative once, so I'll get retested again Thursday. And until I get that second test, I'm sticking around the house. So please, when we get to discussion amongst the council, please try to use your virtual hands since I don't have the lights in front of me to see who's wanting to speak. We'll move to audience communication. At the outset, I'll indicate that we got a series of questions from Neil Johnson relating to the police staffing. So Naomi, if those, make sure those are in the record and in the minutes, and he's asked for a written response by November 1st. So Michael, we can work on getting a response and also provide a public response at our meeting on the 2nd, a week from tonight. So with that, I'll move on to any others who would like to speak to the council tonight. Please raise your virtual hands or signal audibly. Anyone?
It's Mary. I'm sorry, Stephanie. I mean, Mayor Pro Tem.
we have two members in the audience.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mayor.
I can't see theirs. Stephanie, I'll let you go ahead and take care of those that are in the audience.
Sure. I think Commissioner Fay, right? If you would like to go first, and then the other gentleman can go next. 3 minutes, name and address.
Yes, I'll be brief, which will shock most of you on the city council. I'm Randy Fay. I live up in Clearview and I am one of your fire commissioners. And I just wanted to bring greetings from the fire board. My sole purpose here tonight is just give some reassurances. I know all of us in whatever jurisdiction we're in are dealing with the mandates and its impacts on staffing. And we, like a lot of other agencies, have members who are following their conscience, and we've had a few leave. So I'm just here to reassure the city that this is not going to impact your service from the department in any way. We've got all those shifts covered. And we understand ethically and by contract that we have obligations to Mill Creek to maintain a certain level of staffing and response. So I know you're in the middle of your own discussions and problem solving for the city in that issue, but the commissioners just wanted to reassure you that our house is in order and you can expect the same service you've been getting. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fay. Do you want to go next? Name and address in 3 minutes.
My name is Ron Smullen, 14300 Trillium Boulevard, Southeast. As one of the directors for the Mill Creek Community Association, the first thing I'd like to say is a thank you to your maintenance crew for their fast response to this windstorm that we've had for the last couple of days. We were very impressed. Saying that, we've had several complaints from a lot of our residents about our roads not being swept enough. We are fortunate to live within a diverse suburban community. And we feel that it's important that we uphold that. As you know, the debris that we are getting, and this is the complaint, flows into the catch basins and then into the storm ponds. In many cases, these storm ponds are owned and maintained privately. I hope the city budget can give our city employees the tools and staffing they need to provide the type of service our Mill Creek residents expect. I have one more thing to add about our code enforcements. When you look at the sidewalk area by Arena Sports or the sidewalk behind the post office, the vegetation is growing into the sidewalks. Weeds are being left to grow well over a foot high, and the place looks a mess. This is not the standard we would expect in the middle-class residential neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the council chamber want to speak? Okay, we have another gentleman who wants to speak. Name and address in 3 minutes, please. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Neil Johnson. I live at 1540 151st Place Southeast in Juniper and Mill Creek. Good evening, everyone. I have an article here just published in one of our local newspapers, and maybe you're familiar with it. It kind of explains the situation in our police department. I'd like to read a couple of lines of those. I'll be about 5 minutes. Oh, I can put my glasses on here. Officer Steve Smith comments, quote, "When I was hired in 2006, we had 26 police officers. Our population now is 20,000. And we now have 19 police officers. And the last time our department hired a new police officer was April of 2017, excuse me. So 4 years and no new hire of police officers, even though we're losing police officers. There are 3 officers currently in the process of leaving, and we will be down to 16 officers within 2 or 3 months. He added in April, Senior Sergeant Bobby Phillips resigned, partly stating the difficulty of working in an anti-police climate. And he felt that there was no hope for improvement. So if the city could afford 26 police officers in 2014, we could certainly afford to employ 36 officers now, which would be the same ratio as we had in 2014, as the population has gone up by 40% in that 7-year period. Our police department appears to be spread too thin. Do they have proper backup? Seems to me we need more officers. In effect, the city has defunded the police department, but not come out with it about it publicly. I think many citizens are probably unaware of what's in this article until they read it. And I'm sure you are very familiar with the situation. We all know that crime is on the increase. Certain areas, crime is not being enforced. I believe I speak not just for myself, but the majority of citizens in Mill Creek. We want to see that citizens, I would say, we want to see and expect a police department of ample number, excellent officers in a supportive environment that are prepared to enforce the law. In my mind, we want a deterrent force so bad boys will go elsewhere. We want a city that supports our police. So I've printed up 5 questions for the city council and the city manager. And I'd like to read those briefly. Number 1, no new officers hired for 4 years to replace officers leaving. Question, why haven't new officers been hired since 2017? 2, Bobby Phillips resigned April of this year, citing difficulty in anti-police environment. Why are Steve Smith and 3 other officers leaving? The city should have 36 officers, comparing officers per population ratio from 2014. Question, who or what group decides the size of the police force, management, and policies? Who or what group hires new police officers? And lastly, has the city decided on an urgent plan to hire new police officers? In my view, we need 36 officers as soon as possible. Please reply to Neil Johnson in writing by November 1st, 2021. So I plan to be at the next council meeting where I would like to read the answers to these questions. I think it's a priority for this police issue to be on the agenda for the next city council meeting. So I'll be spreading the word of all the people that I know in Mill Creek. And thank you for city manager, city council for your time and attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. As I said at the outset, we will get responses to those. In my opinion, that article is a little misleading. There has not been a hire since 2017 because until June, we only had 1 vacancy in a budgeted position. So the council over the last few biennium have not defunded the police, but will provide more specific responses to your questions prior to next week. So thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else there in the chamber that would like to speak or anyone online? I only see 1 screen. I don't see any of the usual suspects raising their hands. Okay, with that, we will move on in our agenda. Item C, old business, clarification of the law enforcement standards. We are going to move this once again to next week, mainly because Councilmember Cavallari requested that we do so because he is out of town. He was hoping to participate virtually, but the circumstances he's dealing with don't allow that. I will report that Mayor Pro Tem, myself, city manager, deputy city manager, and the police chief did meet with Representatives Berg and Lubbock last week and had a good discussion about the police reform measures, and the chief was able to express some of his concerns and the challenges with those laws. Councilmember or Representative Lubbock will be available to join us next Tuesday at our meeting when we all should be here so we can have a discussion and ask him questions. I will be proposing a revision to the resolution that was in our packets for the last couple weeks, but we will move the discussion of this item over to next Tuesday when Councilmember Cavallari is back, if that is okay with everyone. Not seeing any objections. Okay, the next item, item D, the American Recovery Plan Act. You might recall from our last meeting, staff presented us with a range of potential projects that we could consider using the ARPA funds that have come and will be coming our way. Councilmember Steckler made the request that the staff put together some information on what other municipalities, both the county as well as cities, have done or are doing with their ARPA funds. And the results of that, some of that is in the materials, which Laurel and Michael will summarize for us in a bit. My goal and objective for tonight is for us to come to a consensus on what our next step will be. Do we want to have our next discussion getting into the weeds of projects, or do we first want to have a bigger picture discussion on identifying some goals and objectives to guide how we want to use the ARPA funds that have been allocated to the city? So that's what I hope when we get to discussion we can talk about tonight. And with that, I'll turn it over to Michael and Laurel for their presentation.
Before I turn the floor over to our finance director, at the risk of repeating myself, I want to at least be able to establish the context in which we're going to be asked to make some decisions regarding the city's ARPA funds. While we did provide a comparison as directed, a comparative analysis of other cities, I want us to pay attention to the unique financial circumstances our city finds itself in with regard to some of the things I've stated in the past. With regard to 9 position eliminations, last year, we just barely came in balanced and under budget, which speaks to the structural imbalance that we are attempting to rectify. In addition, we spoke about this at the last council meeting. There's been an institutional habit to deposit one-time only funds in revenue lines into the general fund and treat them as if they were recurring lines for such recurring expenses as payroll. And I would like us, as we look at these comparisons of other cities, to keep in mind that one of the opportunities we have with the ARPA funding is frankly to make up for the revenue losses that are related to COVID. As you recall, the budget we put together last year assumed that our passport office would be open at the beginning of this year. That's only happened since I recall around June, and even there, the volume is not where it used to be. We have some positive news on the retail sales tax, but for any of us that are reading the headlines now, there is a real concern about inflation and how that's going to impact the city's revenue forecasts going forward, particularly without a federal stimulus that may continue to give us revenue receipts or sales tax receipts that can offset the shortages that we're experiencing in other areas. So when we measure against the 2019 numbers for the city of Mill Creek, which the criterion ARPA provides for us, there is an opportunity for us first and foremost to use funding from ARPA to help plug the gaps in our finances. We all enjoy going after new objects and new purchases and capital expenditures, but I want us to at least think about this in the structural framework in which we are now find ourselves. We have a tremendous amount of work to do with reorganizing how the city's finances are managed, and that we need to do that without relying upon one-time only revenue lines and treating them as if they're recurring. We talk about ARPA. I think it's very helpful to look at comparisons in other cities, which our finance director will be presenting on as directed by council. But I want us to also be able to keep that larger context while we hear the presentation. So with that said, I'll turn the floor over to Finance Director Gimzo.
All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and provide some information on how other jurisdictions are allocating ARPA funding. The cities researched that have not allocated funding were not included in the presentation. Many cities have not allocated funding at this time. They've only allocated portions of funding, or they've approved priorities without specified funding levels. So cities of varying sizes were selected in an attempt to provide a wide range of allocation examples. And then All right, so I just wanted to go ahead and start with a summary overall. So most cities our size are in the same situation we are, trying to decide how to best support our communities. Cities with similar population sizes to Mill Creek typically have programs starting with business support and citizen household support. Larger cities are focusing spending on housing and homelessness, behavioral health services. Okay, and so then I thought we'd just go top down, start with federal and state funding. So for federal and state funding, the main focus was housing. So started with housing, then food security and unemployment benefits. And then we'll move into the county. So the county did split their funding. They have the first half, they have split that into two pieces. And then the second half, they haven't provided full details on what that entails. So there's more information to come on the second half of funding. We just don't know what the details are yet. So on the first piece, you will come here. Okay, so they're focusing on housing, human services, so food security, behavioral health services, and childcare, public health, so keeping our communities safe and healthy, mitigating the spread of COVID, and then they're going to move into the second wave of their first half of funding. So from there, in this, we're still in the first half. They are going to still focus on housing, human services, public health, and they're adding the business support. But in addition to all of that, they are going to go ahead and set aside funds for county operations and reserves, because at this point in time, none of us know what's going to happen with COVID. So it is smart not to just spend all of this funding so that you have an option if COVID really does take off again. Okay, so then I went ahead and I started with larger cities, just so we kind of could feel out how everyone was handling this. So I would say the biggest focus was on housing, human services, business support, and then city operations. And when I say city operations, we're talking working remotely, staffing levels, COVID expenses, and then reserves. So that's how we're going to move on city operations. And so then we move to Bellevue, and they're going to focus on housing, human services, business support, and they also are holding reserves to address the changing dynamic in the pandemic. Okay, on to Edmonds, they're just focusing on housing, business support, and infrastructure. And then again, housing, business support, and infrastructure. And then Linwood, they did support their businesses with grants through CARES. So at this point in time, they've approved just a few items. They're focusing on city operations, IT improvements for meetings, and then body cameras. So they are still working through identifying community needs and the best use of funding. Okay, so Lake Stevens focuses more on nonprofits, city operations, infrastructure, and then the IT improvements for meetings. Okay, so I would say Mukilteo is probably the closest in our size so far, and they are focusing more on business assistance, nonprofit assistance, tourism promotion, utility assistance, housing, community outreach, and this is only a piece of their funding. So they do have some other items that they are considering, but they are working through identifying community needs and the best use of funding. So moving on to Monroe. Monroe took an approach I actually hadn't seen anywhere else. And so they basically created 3 different buckets. They said, we want to set these 3 goals. We're not going to say how much money we're giving each of them. We're going to set up grants, and we're going to say, if you have a program that you want supported and it falls in bucket 1, you're going to go to the committee for that bucket 1, and you're going to give them your grant application, and then they're going to review it based on the criteria they set. And then roughly in January, so they'll give the funding out, And then based on how that goes, they're going to reassess in January and decide, is this working for us, or do we want to set other priorities? Do we want to allocate funding differently? Okay, and so from there, really what we're looking at is what is the biggest need in our community? What are our infrastructure needs? What are our infrastructure goals? Right now, we did have revenue losses, and we did have construction sales tax and some transfers that weren't done to offset that revenue loss. And so if we have goals in the future, we do need to consider that, because that will impact our community. Where are the other gaps in our funding programs? What do our children and adults, our seniors need? How can we support small business? And then are there other questions we should be asking? And from here, you can open that up for discussion, and I can go through the PowerPoint again if you need, or I can minimize my screen so you guys can discuss.
Yeah, if you could unshare your screens, I can't see it. I don't have the benefit of seeing everyone. Questions, comments from the council?
I would say overall, I saw housing, human services, business support, infrastructure, and city operations as the main pieces where these other cities are spending funding. And then when you look at smaller items, they are focusing on IT improvements for meetings and body cameras.
That's a question, Director Ginza.
Well, not a question, more like a comment on everything. So nice job. Thank you. This actually offers a great insight across the board against what other cities are doing. And what I was looking at was more for that strategy of how they're utilizing the funds, not the specific allocations of which particular funds. And you gave a couple of great examples of what some cities are using as a strategic use of it, where they say, well, rather than saying exactly what we're going to spend the money on, what are the strategies? What are the outcomes we want to see come from this money? That's what I liked. And that's what I wanted to see us come up with and have a discussion and dialogue about today. So in anticipation of this, some of my thoughts about your question here, biggest needs of our community, what are the infrastructure needs? And actually based on what the city manager actually opened up the conversation with about the future economics of our city, what do we know? And, you know, I also look at a recent newspaper article where a local newspaper did a interview of every single candidate that's running for city council, both the incumbents and the challengers. And they asked them all the same questions about what do you see as the need? Well, what was interesting across the board was one of the greatest needs was this concern for future revenue. We need to increase the revenue opportunities within our city. We need to be looking to the future for the revenue that needs to be generated in order to pay for a lot of the recovery and services that we're looking for. And we don't want to look at doing that by paying for it with increased taxes. So we've been given a gift of $5.8 million, which I think would be strategically a great use of these funds would be to say a portion or how much is up to the council. But I would love to see us say, look, we've got this money. How could we use this? If I give you an example of a strategy, what if we said strategically, we want to take our $5 million and instead of spending on $5 million worth of current needs, what if we could invest this and create some new revenue generating programs for our city that could create within the next 2 years, $5 million worth of incremental reoccurring revenue for our city each and every year. So say we spend the $5 million today, but what we get for it is an additional reoccurring revenue of $5 million for our city. How could we do that? Well, there are programs like our great passport program that we want to expand. We've now got the money to actually go across that street and build out an appropriate services department at our City Hall North where we can add passport services and visas and TSA permits. And we get it out of this City Hall and we build up more of a Department of Licensing building that can handle the volume where we can draw people in from throughout the county and take that $1 million passport business, turn into a $3 million services business. We've also talked about broadband for our city. I recently came back from the Midwest. I spent 2 weeks back there and I met with some of the city officials back there. In the Midwest, the cable is dead. It's disconnected. Cities are doing their own broadband services and people are getting all their television, other services from city provided broadband services. In our case, if we could use some of this money to build our own broadband service, and we provided that broadband service, a quality broadband to our citizens at a cost of less than what they're currently getting. We have 20,000 residents, maybe 10,000 homes. What if just 5,000 people, which is a stupid number, just say if 5,000 signed up for our broadband service at $50 a month, that's $250,000 or $3 million a year in revenue. That's $3 to $5 million worth of potential revenue from broadband. But we could never do that because we have to build the broadband. Well, now we've been given $5.8 million. A portion of that could be used to build broadband. So if we say strategically, how can we take this money? Instead of saying we want to spend $5 million, we want to turn $5 million today into an additional $5 million worth of reoccurring revenue over the next each and every year from say the next 2 years out. I'd say strategically, that's a great goal. And I see what some of them are doing different ways. But in our case, I saw all these council members, myself included, that did speak, that are up for election, say reoccurring revenue is a critical goal for our city going forward. If we are a city that is financially solid and has more than enough money, we can start building additional services to our citizens down the road. I think that would be a great use of this ARPA funding. Strategically, that I don't know about the actual outcome. I just threw some stuff out for examples. Strategically, how can we use our funding to generate reoccurring revenue? That would be my strategy, my recommendation. And I'm
Councilmember Morgan.
Councilmember Bryles had already.
Oh,
His light.
sorry, I didn't have the benefit of seeing who was first and who was second. Councilmember Bryles, then Councilmember Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Director Gimzo, and I'm not sure if you're the right person to answer this question, but I had noticed that we had a number of things on there in which we saw some of the, especially the larger cities, responding to rental assistance for those who have been affected by eviction, who have utilized the eviction moratorium over the last 2 years, basically. What I would like to know is, do we know how many residents have utilized the eviction moratorium in Mill Creek? That could potentially give us some input, some idea where that might be, if that's something we need to use here in Mill Creek. Thank you.
I do not have that information at this time, but I can get that for you.
Councilmember Morgan.
In terms of the ARPA funding, I kind of like the approach that Monroe took in terms of a buckets type of format. That way we don't have to dedicate on specific projects or plans immediately and can focus more on the broad needs. One of those buckets, to Councilmember Steckler's point of view, I think is a great idea to have a revenue generating aspect of it as one of the buckets there. Just from the sense that if we can bring in revenue from that, we don't have to necessarily raise taxes or do these things to shore up our books. So I think that is a good approach from that standpoint. And yeah, thank you.
I'm looking for hands. Any other questions, comments?
So I can't raise my hand. So I actually would like to agree with Councilmember Steckler a little bit on this, that I would like to see us looking at different ways to invest these funds in a way that is going to bring back returns. And that could be multiple different ideas, such as what Councilmember Steckler mentioned with expanding the passports. It also could be investment in infrastructure over in the sub area that would create a better environment to bring in more businesses as well. So I would personally like to see some different options available where we could invest some of this money to make sure that we're increasing our revenues for the future 10, 20 years from now, continuing. I think that would be a good investment. So that's where I would like to see us looking. Thank you.
Well, what are others' thoughts on what the other buckets would be? I mean, I tend to agree with Councilmember Steckler is that from my perspective, the first priority needs to be how we can use these funds to generate continuing revenue in going forward in the future. And so to me, it's is that the number one objective? And if so, how much after that do we leave over for other buckets? And if so, what are those buckets? Councilmember Morgan. Your mic isn't on.
Yeah, to respond to your point there of what are the different buckets and priorities, much like if we were to win a small lottery, I think first thing you need to fix the things around the house that need the most. Fix your washing machine, take care of the necessities. Then once you've taken care of that, you move on to buying the fun investment items that can show returns in the future. So what does that mean in this context? Buckets such as helping our local businesses, fixing stormwater projects and other necessities the city has that we're going to have to pay for anyway. And then moving on to the revenue generating as part of all that.
Other thoughts?
To follow on to that, I saw the county's proposal there in which they had multiple tranches. The first, they had Director Gimzo had pointed out that there were some things that were immediate crisis response type things. And then there was some of the other infrastructure type things that would come on later on. They think they had beginning next year. And that's the type of thing. In that case, we would have time to make a plan and really develop something that could be developing into the future and into potentially future revenue, but the type of thing that's a real investment in our community.
Councilmember Steckler.
Yeah, kind of. I'm going to agree on that too. I looked over the Snohomish County one. What was interesting about that was they had that. I believe that was the one. I was trying to pull it back up again here, but I couldn't on my computer. I believe they were the one where the initial tranche was a small amount of money used to do the research on these various allocations of funds before they start going out and buying things. So, for example, let's say we want to allocate so many of these funds to a consultant that would analyze what it would take, what would be the return of some revenue generating ongoing opportunities for the city, like throwing out ideas, the passport, the broadband, maybe even bringing back the childcare in a way that it was safe and for the city and for the students and that would make it viable for us, or other ideas that maybe amount of money for that. Maybe then we bring in another consultant that would take a look at recommendations on city improvements, staffing, things like that, that could be a utilization. In other words, they took some of their money, a small percentage, and they said, let's do a little analysis. Let's get some research. Let's get some facts. Let's take some time before we start spending and saying, what's the best use of this against a specific goal, So revenue generation is a specific goal. We talk about here, maybe helping businesses. What would be, that's a nice thought. What would we do? What would be that action that we would take? I have no idea. That would take somebody who's maybe had some experience in it, but that could be maybe the best use of the funds first. And we say, we're going to allocate only so much of it for this. And then the management would decide how to best utilize that. And that would maybe give us some direction on what are the right actions, the specific, okay, let's invest in this. Let's invest in this. Let's do this. Let's do this based on getting the right information. Just a thought.
Others? I hear some ideas, but I'm trying to figure out how we steer this forward. To come to a consensus on how we arrive at what those goals and objectives are to give the staff direction on moving forward. I mean, is everyone in agreement that revenue generation should be one of the goals and objectives? Is Councilmember Bond flipping his light switch? I can't tell. We can't, I'm not hearing the audio.
Councilman Bond's mic.
Do you want the microphone?
Sure.
There we go.
Mine, Council.
We can hear you now.
You can hear me? Brian, we're good?
Yes. Yes, we
Okay.
can hear you now.
So I don't think you're going to find anybody that would say they're against generating revenues. It would be nice, anything that we could do that would bring in some income to offset the costs of providing services that continue to go up, and to assist us in maybe not having to raise taxes is certainly desirable. And I will entertain any ideas that come that way. The passport program, prior finance director Ballantyne suggested the Twix program. There were some opportunities there that government could efficiently provide those services. They're not readily available in the free market. What I don't want to do is be involved in anything where we're taking taxpayer monies and in some way, shape, or form competing with the free market and the folks out there that are trying to make a living without taxing people. I can say that I've had my concerns and sometimes challenges with Comcast, and probably the idea of broadband. It's interesting. Some cities do provide utilities. They could fall under a utility type of thing. So I'm thinking about that one. But a lot of the really profitable stuff are already being done by the free market because that's where the money's at. That's why they do it. We provide things that aren't profitable, like parks and community centers and things like that, that nobody wants to put money into because they don't make money, but they're good for the community. And so I would be in favor of having a discussion about ways to generate revenue, if there are any, for sure. And then also looking at some opportunities to enhance the quality of life in town with, we've talked about like our Cook property and the Performing Arts Center, or community center, senior center issue needs, child stuff, things that the free market doesn't provide the citizens because it isn't profitable, but there's value in it.
Thank you, Mark. Any thoughts on how we proceed? I mean, I'm trying to get us to provide direction to the staff of what we want to do for the next step. So do we need to have a further discussion, not necessarily tonight, on, do we need to come back and before next week, all submit to the staff, to Michael, our top 3 or 4 priorities, what each of us would put for the buckets to see where there is alignment or not alignment, to come to some consensus on what we want to focus on next? I'm looking for ideas. Naomi, the audio keeps cutting out.
Joe's coming in there now.
When they start their mic, there's a delay. They just gotta wait for the delay.
Oh, maybe it just takes a while for the mics to warm up. Can you hear me now, Mayor?
Yes, that's exactly it.
I think it takes a while for the mics to warm up now. So we need to make sure either keep some time or keep our mics on and then just don't say anything. Mayor, I like your idea of our top 3 topics. Let's see where the council consensus is. I bring up revenue producing opportunities for the future. I'm just one person on this council. Maybe other people have other thoughts of what they think are the most important things to go after. But I do like the idea of the top 3, 1, 2, 3, and then let's see where there's consensus. Let's Let's get a laundry list of the items today from the council. Every idea is a good idea. Let's copy them down and then let's come back to the city next week with our choices of those three. Okay. How about that for an action?
I agree. I like the idea of all of us submitting our top 3 ideas, and then we can see where we have overlap. So I concur with that. And Councilmember Bryles has his light on.
Yes, hello. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes.
So when we bring up that idea of 3 things, I have 3 in mind, and I think they closely resemble some of those which we've seen here, but maybe they're really broad, vague buckets. And that's part of the issue. And I don't know how tightly we want to get into it. And so I'm just going to list those, and I want to hear what you guys think about scale and scope. One would be solve short-term crises. We can deal with whatever things are directly related to COVID. Plan for future regular revenue investments. And then a third one, develop/build investments, whatever that is that we decide to do. So that's the type of thing that I was thinking in buckets, but I'm not sure if that's the scale and scope that we're thinking. Thank you.
Could you
I don't
repeat
know.
those again?
First one is solve short-term crises. Second is plan for future regular revenue investments. And then third is develop/build investments. It's kind of what it sounds like to me we're kind of talking about, but I want to know if that's scale and scope of what we're talking about, or if we want to talk about some specific potential ideas.
I think you got it. That's, why don't we just get a list of everybody's ideas? And then we could, maybe Naomi could submit that to us all, and we could come back with our top 3 by next week. Does that sound okay to everybody?
Yeah, I think that works.
Okay, Mayor.
Councilmember Bryles, I'm not, whether your buckets are the appropriate size or not, or I don't know until we all submit our ideas to see if we're on the same, thinking similarly. So can everyone get something to Naomi by the end of the week that staff can put together? And actually if they could do it by close of business Thursday, so we can put the results into the agenda packet on Friday. Does that work for everyone as a homework item? Your mic isn't, there you go. Now your mic's warmed
I
up.
think just that clarification. Don't you want to get the list to all the council members so the council members can give you their top 3 for next week?
The idea is that each of us submit to Naomi our top 3 so that she can have that information assembled for next week.
If everybody just listed off all of their items, some of them are going to be duplicates anyway. And then of the total list that everyone came up with, everybody pick your top 3 off that list. That way everyone gets to look at everyone else's ideas, and maybe somebody else has an idea that somebody else would like even better than their own.
No, I think, John, I think we're saying the same thing. If everyone can get to Naomi by Thursday, our top 3, we'll put together a list that identifies what everyone identified as their buckets, their 3 buckets. And then we can see where there is consensus amongst the 7 of us.
Okay.
So I think we're accomplishing both. We're seeing what all the ideas each one of us had, and then at the same time seeing where there's agreement. Okay, so we have our homework assignment for close of business on Thursday, please. Any, Mike or Mark, massage your microphone so it warms up a little bit.
Don, trying to. So if any other members are interested, I would like to find a way that we could add an option for directors and staff to also add to the wish list if there's something that they feel would be of value. Let's just hypothetically, the police chief says, man, if I had body cams, then, and the ARPA funding allowed for that. And we thought, oh, we hadn't thought of that. Maybe that's something we want to consider. I don't know if there's any way to empower staff, but I'd be interested in letting the directors and our city manager chime in on the wish list.
I think that's an excellent idea.
I concur. Good idea, Mark. So now the directors have homework as well.
Everyone has homework.
Don't have to, just making it available.
Not to be a spoiler alert, but I've heard all of us talk about the need to improve the audio visual in this room, and we've already done preliminary homework in that regard. So
Okay.
that'll be on many of our lists, and we've heard council speak to it in the community. So
Okay. Thank you, Laurel, for putting together all that information. Appreciate it. That was helpful. Okay, we will move on now to the consent agenda. Item E, approval of checks number 63883 through 63940 and ACH wire transfers in the amount of $140,138.26. The audit committee was Mayor Pro Tem substituting for Councilmember Cavalieri and myself. Were there any exceptions?
No exceptions, Mayor.
No exceptions here. Item F, payroll and benefit ACH payments in the amount of $260,383.60. Any exceptions?
No exceptions.
No exceptions here. And item G, council meeting minutes of October 12th, 2021. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Consent agenda.
Seconded.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Consent agenda is approved 6-0. On to reports. I just had two things. One is, I mentioned the last meeting that the AWC has come out with their legislative priorities for the coming session. There were only 3, and they mostly focused on transportation. I think in the coming meetings, we're going to be working onto our agendas, having some discussions about what priorities we want to identify and for the upcoming session. This was part of our discussion with Representatives Berg and Glovic last week of how we can have communication during the session of what's going on and where they need input from us, and to keep us apprised of bills that we may be interested in or concerned about, so that we can decide how or when we need to participate. So look for that at an upcoming meeting in the next few weeks. We'll try to fit it in so we can have that discussion of how we can get more actively involved. And then the second is I'm hoping to begin with the off week in November, our virtual town halls that the mayor, or Mayor Pro Tem and I were hosting before silly season started. So we're targeting our off week on, which I think is the 16th of November, for having the next one of those. With that, I'll go down the dais. Councilmember Bond, or Mayor Pro Tem, any report tonight?
I do want to say thank you for bringing up the legislative agenda. That's something that's extremely important to me, and I really would like to see us begin to plan ahead and get our legislative priorities in order and make sure that we have a plan for the things that we would like to find funding for, so that we can go to our legislators and ask them for that funding. And we need to have agreed upon that as a council in order for us to actually push for those fundings and grants. Also, I'm hoping that we can get a update before too long on the crosswalk at Jackson High School, an update on how the traffic study is going. I know that school is getting ready to be out for Christmas before we know it, or for winter break. And so I would like to know how the traffic study is going. I'd hate for us to get into the holidays and it hasn't been started. So I was just wanting to know an update on that. And then a side note, also, I was out at 164th and Bothell Everett Highway, and the flags are missing from the crosswalk for people to carry as they're walking. And someone mentioned it to me while I was out there that they've been missing and they would like to see those replaced because it's dangerous to walk across there. So I just want to bring that to somebody's attention as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Bond, any report tonight?
For coming down and briefing us. I've served with Commissioner Fay for a long time, and he's always a gentleman.
Councilmember Steckler, any report this evening?
Just a quick thank you to the City of Mill Creek, city employees, including the Marketing Communications Department, the Kiwanis Club of Mill Creek, and the Citizens Patrol. We had another very, very, very successful document shredding event this past weekend at City Hall North. It was extremely well attended by the citizens and even some outside citizens. Once again, we filled the shredding truck. We made it bulge. So it was a very great service that we provided to the citizens. This is the 4th year that we've been doing it, and we'll continue to do it each and every year. So it's a great service, but it takes a large group to make it happen. So I want to say a special thank you to everybody who helped make that possible.
Thank you, John. Councilmember Briles, any report tonight?
No report, Mayor.
Councilmember Morgan?
No report, Mayor. Thanks.
Thank you. Michael, one thing, if you or Director Todd could possibly address, I noticed this morning that one of the light poles it's on the west side of Village Green Drive by the pond, by the 9th green at the golf course, had come down. I don't know if it was taken down by a car or if it came down in the windstorm. So I'd be interested to know, is that something the city's responsible for fixing, or is that a PUD pole that they replace? So.
PUD, but Matthew will speak to that. We replaced one a little while ago. Here's another one. So Matthew,
Okay.
go ahead.
That's kind of the long and short of it. That is a PUD pole. I've contacted PUD and let them know about the pole issue. So we're waiting on replacement at this point.
Okay, thank you. City Manager, your reports, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, I want to give you an update on our efforts. It really is an all hands on deck approach that involved the Communications and Marketing Department, Scott Harder, Jody Hawkins, a number of members of the Mill Creek Police Department in producing a video. We also have some other marketing materials. I just want to show you the poster we created. And then if it pleases the council, we have like about a 1.5-minute video that we wanted to show you. First of all, what's up on the screen is the poster that was created by our communications and marketing team, noting the QR code is now a ubiquitous feature of our marketing efforts, so that we're constantly able to update as we are offering numerous links for those who are interested in joining our police force through the lateral route to do so. Secondly, what I'd like to do then is show you the video that was produced. It began actually shortly the very next morning after the council meeting, when President Mack and Vice President Smith spoke to the council. And so with your indulgence, I would ask Naomi if you could please press play. This is not out there in public, but it will be after tonight. Please.
Not hearing audio.
By run of this, I'm not sure what the challenge is now. So we will show you the audio. There's a voiceover that explains the numerous features that many of us find Mill Creek a very, very desirable place to work. And I don't think I'm alone when I say that we do feel lucky to work here.
I'm sorry, can we try it again?
Yes, please.
My name is Chris White. I started with the Mill Creek Police Department in 2001.
Can you
Been
hear
here
it?
20 years. Mill Creek has the best citizens that you could ever imagine. They're supportive.
That means a lot to myself as an officer, and I know it has an impact on other officers.
Feeling appreciated is one of those things. You want to know that our work is noticed and matters.
Knowing people, having people know you, makes the job fun.
We're always pushing our group of officers to challenge themselves or to see what we can do to make our agency better.
The officers I work with are highly professional. They look at people not as victims, they look at them as actual human beings.
We have really dedicated officers that care a lot. They're compassionate, they're funny, they're thoughtful, they're empathetic towards others.
It brings home why I got into the profession, that is to help people.
Our area is really beautiful. We experience all the seasons. You know, you're going to get your summer and winter. There's a lot of opportunity for whatever you enjoy in life. There's that avenue open.
Come here and be literally the best officer that you want to be. This place gives plenty of opportunities for that.
Well, materials being out there, they'll be linked in every way that Scott Harder and Jody Hawkins are recommending, including on the ADP job bulletin board. But on 10/21, with a revised posting, I'm happy to report that we now have, out of a total of 8 new lateral applicants, 5 whom are qualified and will be moving to oral board interviews on November 1st. Our goal is to send offer letters by mid-December or possibly even earlier for the first pool of applicants. So again, I believe there are a number of factors that have contributed to this first round of applicants. And we'll have more to report to council by our next meeting.
Great job. That's a good looking video.
Yeah, and I really need to acknowledge, including all the officers in the screen, we really do have a new era in our communications and marketing department. I spoke with Scott Harder and Jody Hawkins that Wednesday morning, and we were off and running. If we were to produce this through a consultant on the outside, this couple of minutes of time roughly translates, I think, into about 20 hours of work, 15, 20 hours of work. We would have paid handsomely for this if we had gone to the outside. In fact, at one point, President Mack and Vice President Smith were going to offer referrals of individuals that they were aware of that could help in the production. I'm really pleased with the professional level quality of the promotional video we have. And interestingly enough, we haven't even broadcast this. And we already have 5 applicants that are going to be up for oral board interviews on the 1st. So with that, Mayor, I conclude the report.
I see the Mayor Pro Tem's hand is up.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, City Manager. That video does look very, very nice and very professional. And thank you to Scott and Jody for a professional job and a quick turnaround on that. I was curious. I know we were talking about the bonus for the lateral hires, and we had the structure, and I couldn't remember if we can get some information on how are we offering the same equitable structure to lateral officers, no matter where they're coming from, or were we doing something different depending on where they were coming from, if they were in state or out of state? Also, I personally want to know if we can get this up in a way where it's on social media, in a way that I can share it the proper way to share that we are hiring and asking for applicants, so that I am getting the word out without wording it improperly, and so that everything is appropriate. So if we could get that out there so that I could just share what the city is saying, then the wording's all vetted and the link is already there for them to go to apply, and they can follow the proper procedure. So I just want to know that. And then a little more, if we can just start to get some updates on specifically what we are doing. I think everyone's wanting to know what specific steps we are going to be taking to make sure this process is streamlined and that we are moving quickly. 'Cause I think everyone is asking us what steps we're doing and what are we doing. I know I've been inundated with emails from people and phone calls. So I think just getting that out there to let everyone know what steps we're taking to speed up the process and be able to move forward would be helpful. Thank you.
Anything else from the council? Any others?
Councilman
John?
Steckler, yeah, just if you don't mind, kind of jumping on Mayor Pro Tem Vignell, I like her thoughts. You're probably already doing all this stuff, Michael, but just kind of throwing it out there. LinkedIn would be a great place to post this thing. And I'll just throw myself out there as a LinkedIn member. I've got 4,000 connections on LinkedIn, many of them with executive recruiter firms. If you want to, just send it out to me. I will post it to all of my connections, which will go to all those recruiters, which wouldn't be a bad one, but at least it will get, and then also to get it posted on LinkedIn, which is a big job search board now. That's really its primary use. I think that'd be a great place. You're probably already doing that, but I just thought I'd throw that out.
Got it. Thank you.
Just throw it out.
Yeah, Michael, I think it's really important that we get out publicly the information and what it is that we're soliciting for. One of our colleagues who is not here tonight, I think, is creating a lot of public consternation with, well, let's just leave it at that. And so I think it's important that we, as a council, state, or as a city, state what it is that we're looking for and what is being done for the search, so that, because it should be coming from the city manager, you're the one responsible with the police chief for conducting these searches and hiring the officers. So
Materials together in that regard. We've got a number of links that are on standby. My plan is to coordinate so that we can get those all out to the council members on the city's website, and all hands on deck with helping us distribute. At this point, we have a very detailed plan regarding everything that you've mentioned. So we'll share
Great.
that with you.
Great, thank you. Okay, that brings us to audience communication. Would anyone like to speak? Oh, she is fast.
Speak again.
I'm sorry?
Commissioner Fay raised his hand again.
I did.
Oh, okay, let's start in the, Stephanie, go ahead and start with those that are in the audience, and then we'll move to the virtual world.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Fay, name and address.
Randy Fay, Clearview. Not to kind of create more work for the city. As you know, this November on the election, our levy issue is huge for the fire department. And this follows on 2 unsuccessful campaigns last year. So kind of coming back to your discussion about how to use your grant money, you want to get that right strategically. I totally understand it. One lesson learned for us going into the levy campaign this year is we realized that in trying to understand the issues that led to those past levies not being approved, that we hadn't done a very good job with community engagement. Now, at some point along the way, as you work with your directors to collect your ideas, I would just throw it out there for consideration at some point in the process to surgically engage with some of your community members. And one thing we learned through the COVID experience at the county is there's a lot of overlapping of organizations and agencies that never existed pre-COVID. So I know in Mill Creek, with my work with the county, you've had nonprofits working in the city that maybe you never had a relationship with before, with the Nourish Your Neighborhoods program. I know that there are hospitals that are doing a lot of research and study, particularly on the recovery issue for communities. So if that idea gets any traction, once you've kind of agreed on your buckets, I would just offer that it may be worthwhile to pull representatives from non-traditional community partners like the nonprofits and like your hospitals and some of your associations, your business community, and let them look at your buckets and validate that for you. We were surprised in talking to the surfer community, their issues they defined for us that, all 9 of us commissioners basically know everything, and we were shocked to find out that we didn't in terms of what was on their minds, what their concerns were, where there was opportunities for us to improve service. So as an interested third party, I would just offer that up, that maybe that can help you along your way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fay. Stephanie, is there anyone else there at the audience who'd like to speak?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Barbara.
Barb Heidel, 1401 144th Place Southeast, Mill Creek. Thank you, Mayor. Hopefully now that there is the video going out tomorrow, there will be no more delays or blockades or extra unnecessary hoops to go through to cause a delay that we do not need to hire more officers. I do hope it will be the chief and the guild, I guess, who have the most clout on deciding whether a candidate should be hired for our police department. Since these officers will be working in the police department, not the city side, I do seriously hope the chief has the ultimate say on what and who would fit best for our police department. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. Is there anyone else in the virtual world that would like to speak to the council tonight? Mr. Nelson.
Yeah, Will Nelson, 14925 29th Drive Southeast, Mill Creek. Regarding the budgets, in past conversations and listening to the council, I think both Mark Bond and former council member Mike Todd, and if I'm have the names wrong, they can speak for themselves, have brought up the concept that we seem to have recurring, non-recurring income over the years as our budget surplus seems to have remained around the $6 million level, such as a minimum number of home sales per year. So personally, I think that should be part of the budget discussion, that we do have recurring, non-recurring expenses, if you follow what I mean, that we can draw on from that pool to fund ongoing expenses. How much they are, I have no idea, but we've discussed that in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to the council? Okay. Hearing none, the council is now going to go into executive session. Two matters. One is to discuss potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1I. And there's a matter we also need to discuss regarding the performance of a public employee pursuant to section 110 subsection 1G. Michael, for the litigation matter, how long do you and Grant need?
Do it in 15 minutes or less.
Okay, so let's start with, what time is it? A half hour. Let's go to 7. We'll go into executive session until 7:45. So if Naomi could help beam me up to the virtual conference room, I'd appreciate it.
It started on, I was on there in the beginning and then it went away and then I could come back and I turned the computer off and came back and did all kinds of things and it just. Well, now I do need to do an update and maybe that's the problem. It's done this before when Cora's just be having piano class. So it's never happened when it's a microphone on. Time.
Okay. I figured it was. Available for Lisa. Check.
Council extended executive session until 8 PM. Council has extended executive session until 8:15. Council is extending executive session till 8:30. Correction, 8:20. Am I closing the room? Oh, you're muted, Mayor.
Oh, there she is.
Okay, I'm
I
back.
can hear you.
Hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. We have concluded our executive session, and hearing no objections, we will adjourn the regular meeting for tonight.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.